Right now, there's a $5.7 billion hole in American tourism from last year. Not a projection, not a worst-case guess. That's the number the U.S. Travel Association is reporting as actual lost spending. A big piece of it traces back to one country deciding, in large numbers, that it was time to spend vacation dollars somewhere else. Let that figure sit for a second. $5.7 billion is not background noise. It represents hotel rooms that stayed empty, restaurants that served fewer tables, rental cars that sat on lots, and paychecks that got smaller in towns that count on visitors. The early numbers from 2026 show the drop isn't easing off. If anything, it's gaining momentum. Whether you're watching from Canada wondering how this all lands north of the border, or you're in the US trying to make sense of what's happening to local economies, this isn't staying contained to policy debates. It's already showing up in quieter streets and thinner crowds. For a long time, Canada was the single biggest source of international visitors to the United States. More than 20 million Canadians crossed in 2024 and spent roughly $20.5 billion while they were there. That spending supported an estimated 140,000 American jobs, mostly in hotels, restaurants, entertainment, airports, and the small businesses that orbit them. These are the parts of the economy where the work is hands-on and the wages often sit right in the middle or below it. When that flow slows, the effect isn't theoretical. It lands on real people trying to keep shifts and cover bills. Then the pattern broke. Statistics, Canada data shows Canadian trips back from the U.S. fell 22% in January 2026 compared with the same month the year before. That January number marked the 13th straight month of year-over-year declines. February brought another 14.5% drop and set a new low for cross-border movement. This isn't the kind of dip that follows a rough winter or a currency swing. It's millions of individual decisions adding up to something larger and more deliberate. Between 59 and 62% of Canadians say U.S. government policies and the public tone around them have made them significantly less likely to head south for a trip. That range has held across multiple polls and more than a year of asking. When the same answer keeps coming back no matter how the question gets worded, it moves from "people are annoyed" to "this is how behavior is changing on the ground." While U.S. destinations have been losing ground, Canada's own tourism sector has been moving in the other direction. Destination, Canada's official outlook for 2026 through 2035 projects visitor spending inside Canada, reaching $140.9 billion this year, up 6% from 2025. The sector is growing faster than the broader Canadian economy. 1 in 10 Canadian jobs now connects to tourism in some way, and the industry puts more than $364 million a day into communities across the country. The same trade tensions that are draining money from American tourism are sending it toward Canadian destinations, Mexican resorts, and European cities instead. It's not only Canadians staying closer or choosing other countries. Visitors from the UK, Europe, and parts of Asia-Pacific are showing up in Canada in growing numbers too. The country ranked at the top of global reputation indexes in 2026, and that standing is turning into more arrivals. While the US is managing a drop in how it's seen as a place to visit, Canada is seeing some of the attention shift its way. The pain inside the United States isn't landing evenly, and that unevenness is part of what makes the story more complicated than most headlines capture. Start with Las Vegas. In 2024, roughly 1.4 million Canadians visited the city. They tended to spend on shows, hotels, meals, and entertainment. Exactly the kind of visitor that helps keep occupancy rates and service wages steady. By 2025, that number had fallen about 20%. Airline capacity between Canada and Las Vegas dropped around 35%. The lowest level since 2006. The city overall finished 2025 with a 7.5% year-over-year decline in total visitors, its weakest full year since 2010 outside the pandemic period. Tourism officials from Las Vegas made the trip to Vancouver twice, once in August 2025 and again early in 2026, specifically to try to bring Canadian visitors back. A handful of resorts ran targeted promotions and saw modest improvement. But the fact that one of the most famous tourist cities in the world had to mount an active campaign to recover business it used to take for granted tells you how far the situation had moved. Florida has its own version of the same story. Air Transat, a major Canadian carrier, announced it would end all U.S. flights by June 2026, citing sustained low demand. In Central Florida, the city of Lakeland had to cancel its long-running snowbird event, an annual gathering that had operated since 1995 for Canadian winter visitors. 30 years of tradition ended because the reliable flow of visitors wasn't there to support it anymore. Airline schedules across the board reflect the same pressure. Carriers removed nearly 450,000 seats from Canada to U.S. routes in the first part of 2026, a 10.1% reduction in overall capacity. WestJet cut its U.S. capacity by 19%. Flair Airlines, which had been expanding American routes, reduced its U.S.-bound capacity by 58%. Air Canada trimmed by 7%. Airlines don't pull seats because of headlines. They pull them when planes are flying with too many empty seats. When several carriers make similar moves at once, you're looking at demand that has genuinely fallen, not just a passing news cycle. Mark Carney's government never called for a boycott. There was no official campaign. No government advertising telling Canadians where to vacation or where to avoid. What the government did was hold a firm line on tariffs and trade issues and keep its public posture steady. The result has been that a large share of ordinary Canadians, that 59 to 62% range, started making different choices with their own money. It's economic pressure coming directly from consumer decisions rather than from government directives. That kind of pressure spreads across hotels, restaurants, rental counters, and theme parks in a way that's hard to match with traditional trade tools aimed at specific industries. Tourism spending carries a multiplier effect that makes the contraction larger than the headline number. $1 spent at a hotel moves to the restaurant across the street, the shuttle driver, the laundry service, the gift shop. When that dollar stops coming for month after month, the slowdown moves through the local economy in stages. Towns that had no role in setting trade policy are living with the downstream effects in their job counts and their municipal budgets. While American tourism markets have been contracting, Canadian spending hasn't vanished. It has been redirected, and the new patterns suggest this isn't a short-term adjustment. Toronto to Cancun is now Mexico's busiest international flight route. Canada to Mexico flights rose 15.7% year over year. WestJet now operates more than half of all Canada-Mexico winter flights. Airbnb data shows Canadian travelers booking more international trips outside the United States, with near double-digit growth compared with early 2024. Trending destinations for Canadians include Tokyo, Rio de Janeiro, Paris, Casablanca, and Los Cabos. Visits to the United Kingdom from Canada rose 14% in recent figures. Mexico saw 22% growth. China posted an 11% increase. Inside Canada, domestic tourism searches jumped nearly 20%, and 64% of Canadians in a national survey said they planned a vacation within the country this year. Banff, Jasper, Vancouver, and parts of Nova Scotia are reporting record visitor numbers. There is a counterpoint worth noting. American visitors to Canada rose 6.1% in February 2026, the first year-over-year increase after 12 straight months of declines. Americans have continued heading north even with the political climate, but the volumes don't balance evenly. Canada was sending more than 20 million visitors south each year. The United States sends roughly 12 to 13 million north. The gap in scale means the Canadian pullback hurts American tourism more than any matching American reduction would hurt Canada. On the Canadian side, the money staying home or moving to other destinations is showing up in domestic economic numbers. RBC Economics reported that Canada's domestic tourism, GDP, grew at an annualized rate of 4.8% in the fourth quarter of 2025, even as the broader economy faced tariff-related pressures. That spending isn't being saved or canceled. It's moving into Canadian hotels, restaurants, attractions, and services instead. Every dollar that once went to a Las Vegas hotel or a Florida theme park and now goes to a British Columbia resort or a Nova Scotia inn is supporting Canadian jobs and Canadian tax revenue. In an unexpected way, the trade friction intended to create pressure has functioned partly as an unplanned stimulus for Canada's own tourism sector. Destination Canada projects that by 2035 total tourism revenue in Canada will reach $216.3 billion, 67% higher than 2024 levels. The overseas market is forecast to grow at 9.8% annually over the next decade. Tourism is also positioned to contribute to Canada's larger goal of building $300 billion in additional non-U.S. exports by 2035. What began as an emotional reaction to political tensions is becoming part of a longer-term diversification story. One reason these shifts tend to stick is what happens with airline routes and capacity. When carriers retire flights and move aircraft to corridors that are actually selling tickets, those retired routes don't automatically return when the political mood improves. Air Transat's decision to drop all U.S. service by June 2026 is not presented as a temporary pause. It's a business judgment that Canadian demand for U.S. routes won't recover quickly enough to justify keeping the operation running. When one carrier makes that calculation, others have to reassess their own schedules. The aviation market is acting as a leading indicator, and right now it's signaling that the people who actually fly the planes do not expect a fast rebound. The U.S. Travel Association had been counting on 2026 as a recovery year, partly because the FIFA World Cup, co-hosted by the United States, Canada, and Mexico, was expected to drive large volumes of cross-border travel. That assumption is now running into complications. Multiple countries have issued travel advisories for the United States ahead of the tournament. The same political atmosphere that pushed Canadians to look elsewhere is shaping how other nations view the U.S. as a destination. The event that was supposed to help close the tourism gap may take place against a backdrop of continued hesitation from potential visitors. For the U.S. tourism industry, the honest assessment is this: its largest international customer base, 20 million visitors, $20.5 billion in spending, 140,000 supported jobs, did not leave because a competing destination suddenly offered a better product or lower prices. They left because of a set of policy choices and the reaction those choices triggered. Recovery is possible, but it depends on the conditions that produced the shift changing first. At the moment, many of the signals are still pointing the other direction. I've been sitting with one question through all of this. Between a tariff announcement in Washington and a canceled hotel booking in Vancouver or Toronto, something shifted in how people on one side of the border actually think about the place on the other side. Not just in trade data or flight schedules, but in the everyday decisions about where to go for a break. Once that kind of change settles into personal attitude and habit, it raises a real question about how fully or quickly it can be walked back. Is this something that fades when the headlines move on, or are we watching a longer-term redraw of the travel map between these two countries? That's the piece that keeps coming back. What do you think? Does this feel like something that can be fixed with the next agreement? Or has the ground moved in a way that's harder to reverse? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If this gave you a clearer picture of what's actually happening with cross-border travel and the economy on both sides, give the video a like and subscribe for more straight breakdowns like this one. Hit the notification bell so you catch the next story as it develops. Thanks for watching all the way through. It genuinely helps. We'll see you in the next one.